This podcast is brought to you by our fine Patreon supporters. If you want to support this podcast, visit patreon.com/dissectingthe80s and find out about all of our wonderful tiers of extra content. You get a sticker just for signing up at any of the tiers, and at the $5 tier, you get a bonus episode every other month, including one voted on by you in Listener Request Month. So go over to patreon.com/dissectingthe80s and see more about how to support this show. Welcome to Dissecting the 80s. I am Tripp, one half of the Mega Podcasting Powers. And with me, as always, is a man who would smelt his stolen gold into something much more stylish than a cross, the Macho Man Drew.
Andrew Leno. Or I would spend it, you know. Hot take, I know.
Well, so I feel like part of that was like the unspoken thing of it was, oh, this was like a guilt thing.
I guess. I mean,
so it's like it's in the church. It's not benefiting any of them directly. It's not like we didn't.
But I thought the whole point of it was that they were like, we'll use his gold to build to buy things to make the church. Like that seemed like.
Yeah, it didn't. The movie obviously does not explore this, but it seems to me like one of those things where it's like, well, we're not monsters, you know.
Oh, I think they fully were monsters. We'll get into it.
No.
I think
I am not defending them. I am saying they would say something like, well, we're not monsters.
But I thought that the priest specifically said, like, in the journal, as he's reading the journal, it's like, we can use their gold to build the church, and that is what is okay about this.
Okay, interesting. Well, my theory is bunk then. I don't know what to tell you. We are celebrating John Carpenter's 75th birthday month, much like our Kurt Russell WrestleMania back was that last year or the year before? I don't remember.
I think it was 21. I think it was 21.
Okay. Well, in any case, that was WrestleMania. This is John-uary, and we watched The Fog, so you know what that means.
We gotta go back. We gotta go dissect the 80s. It's your ghost murder. Someone's coming at your ghost murders.
When the mega powers explode.
I'm talking about the 80s. Oh, yeah.
Great Scott.
Cream of the crop. Oh, yeah.
Mega powers, yeah.
When this baby hits 88 miles per hour, you're gonna see some serious shit.
So I'm gonna immediately briefly tangent here. In a previous episode, and God help me, I don't remember what it is. This one has a lot of church in it. This movie, The Fog. So I was thinking about it, but I recently moved, and on my daily walk route, I now see nuns every day. And I think in the past we had an episode where you were asking about oh, are there still nuns out there? And I was like, yeah, I see nuns.
Full habit nuns was what I said.
Yeah, well, I'm like, I see full habit. The nuns, they rock I don't know if this is like a weekday weekend situation, because it is a Catholic. I believe it's a Roman, and maybe it's a Roman Catholic thing. But these nuns are wearing a blue and then a gray or a gray or bluish gray secondary piece. But the hood part is like a what's our high school color? Royal blue.
Royal blue, a bright blue like that.
Yeah.
So is it like how kind of like a jumper situation where it's like a dress overalls and then under, because I've seen the training nuns or teacher nuns wear that kind of thing.
It looks more to me like a poncho, like a hood poncho that's just like Link Link, yes, in Zelda wears.
Yes, that's Link.
A hood and a tunic. It's like a tunic hood thing.
Oh,
and then underneath is more of a shirt with long sleeves.
Oh, not quite what I'm picturing, but okay.
Yeah. I'm not going to take a creep shot of a nun, so maybe we could Google nun and it would come up, but that's not what I'm doing. But I also noticed that they're usually carrying the rosary, so I think it's like a walk and pray.
Okay.
Sort of like the Aaron Sorkin walk and talk is my guess.
I feel like I see that in movies. The nuns walk with the rosaries.
Yeah, so... I today walked by one and had my first nun eye contact. So I noticed she was holding a rosary. So anyway, I don't remember what episode that was. It was at least 18 months ago because I have pretty strong memories of which house I was in when I recorded it.
Yeah, I was in my old apartment.
Yeah. So anyway, if you remember, tweet at Dissect the 80s or hit us up on Facebook or whatever and tell us what episode we were talking about nuns. But I
want to say Sister Act, but we've never done Sister Act.
Yeah, it wasn't Sister Act. I mean, it could have been a tangent about Sister Act.
Probably Ghost. I'm going to guess it was Ghost.
No, it's not that old. Ghost is like 7
Second
years
year.
ago at this point. Yeah. Anyway, let's talk about The Fog. I had seen this before once and remembered not really digging it. And I think you said when I asked you no on this original?
No, I've never seen the original. I've seen the remake, and the remake's obviously not great. It's part of that like glossy early 2000s swath of remakes where everything is shiny and mean. But there were elements of that I remember liking more than that. I've seen it. It was a couple years ago, but this movie kind of like, it doesn't feel very Carpenter, and that there's no mystery or like build up. It's just like 30 minutes in, the priest is like, "Oh wow, our town founders murdered a bunch of people on a boat. That's crazy. Here's the whole story." And I was like, well, wait, what? What? You're saying that?
It feels like the scene with the ship captain telling the campfire story was added in post. Like
it was.
I didn't doing some of the research for us is like they made the whole movie, of course, and edited together. And Carpenter was like, "Oh, this stinks. I have to go back and do things." And so this was part of a reshoot and a couple other scenes we'll get to when they come up maybe. But I think this is actually like really helpful, not necessarily for the typical movie things of like establishing characters or anything like that, but more from the standpoint of establishing the tone, because with this campfire thing, it kind of puts you in the headspace immediately of like, okay, we're doing a campfire tale as a movie.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. And I think this movie is like, this is a campfire tale of a movie. Even down to like the ending, which we'll get to, of course, when we get there, but that is a campfire story ending to me of like,
I guess I just don't want that as a movie. Like
that's totally reasonable. And I don't like this movie that much, but I do think that is like, I think that's what this movie sort of is aiming to be. And I think it successfully does that thing. I just don't think
that thing is just not great. It does the thing. Like you made a cake flavored like licorice.
Yeah.
And it's a great cake in terms of cake making, but like who wants it?
I was going to say bubblegum ice cream, and it was just like the same exact things you're saying of like, it's just a very creamy and delicious, and I can taste the quality of the cream that you went into this, but also I don't want to eat a cup of bubblegum ice cream. Thank you. I'm 36 years old almost.
Yeah. Because like, I maybe this happens in the remake. I can't remember all the details, but like I needed Janet Leigh's character to be like a descendant of someone
100%
who knew exactly what happened the whole time. Like behind closed doors, her family would like brag about what they did to the leper colony. And
of
like,
course, yeah.
That kind of thing.
Or it could also be like a shameful secret that she knows about, but I do need her to know about it for sure.
But then also, because then also she is trying to cover it up. It feels more that she's complicit in doing things. It just feels like not a lot of people, there's not a lot of like logic and basis for things, which, because I was like, well, how are they deciding who to attack? There's no like, there is no pattern. We're the children, we're the descendants of the block. Like I needed that. Yes. I needed, shady Janet Leigh is trying to cover up and be like, hey, father, you should shut up about this. Give me that book.
So agreed. And them both being tied to it would make both of them targets. And then maybe the kid is a target because he found the piece of the ship and it's in his bedroom.
And that should, exactly.
He has a gold coin and they're coming for the gold like that. Like if the kid had found, like, I like the part, I like what they do with the piece of the ship, but it was a gold coin at first. And so it's like, okay, maybe it's just a gold coin and the kid has a piece of the treasure and therefore he's a target. Like way, way simpler. The other thing I think is a problem with this movie is there's not enough story for this many characters.
No.
And it's all it's all actors that I like, and it's all characters that I think do a good job with what they're given. But like Adrianne Barbeau and Jamie Lee Curtis should be one character. And it's like, I don't want to take roles away from women, but I just think that it's like extraneous. I don't think
they need to be one character, because I like that Adrianne Barbeau is trapped in the light. I like that she's sort of the eye in the sky.
Yeah.
Like separated from everyone. But I guess it means you just don't have a Jamie Lee Curtis at all.
Right. And it's like, I just want the eye in the sky person to, when they're not broadcasting, because they only broadcast at night, it seems, to be like trying to figure out what the hell's going on and like doing the research with the microfiche at the town historical center, and your character, the Janet Leigh, like what, as you propose, which I think is great, like that character trying to like stop them from learning this information and broadcast.
Oh, I'm sorry. All that microfiche has been checked out for, and then it's by Mayor Janet Leigh, and they can be like,
yeah.
And they can see that it's been checked out for 30 years or something silly.
Yes.
Like,
or it was destroyed in a fire mysteriously 15 years ago or something. Just like any of these things. Yeah. I really like so much of this, like from a story standpoint. Like I do think I'd like a campfire story of a movie if it was done in the right way. And I like the like small town secrets thing for horror movies. I think that's very cool. I like that. I've seen a lot of
seaside
movies.
Towns. I'm a slut for a seaside town.
Heck yeah. We are big Jaws heads on this podcast. Like we are into it. And there's a lot of cool stuff you can do with the nature of a seaside town being sort of sequestered and not really connected to the outside world in ways that are
they always feel like their own thing. Even like in the real world, like if you visit a quaint small seaside town, it's sort of like, oh, this does feel weird here.
Yeah. You're like, oh, this is a character. New York is the 5th Sex in the City. Seaside, the fog town, is the 5th, member of this little, group. But yeah, it's like, I liked a lot of the pieces of this movie, but as I'm watching it, I'm like, there's not enough story for this. Like the Jamie Lee Curtis
also for this length, it's like, there's like not enough story for the length of movie. Cause I'm as you're saying that, I'm like, yeah, but then we should cut other things to include the sequence of research and stuff.
Yes. This is truly a anthology TV episode.
Yes.
This is a very good, like 50-minute anthology TV episode in my mind. I think this is that much story, which, they didn't, it's John Carpenter. There was a million reasons why he didn't do it, but like he later did some of that stuff, and he made, Body Bags, which I think was a TV show that they cut into a movie at some point, whatever. But
is Body Bags part of Masters of Horror?
No, but it's a similar thing. This would be a great Masters of Horror. It's another, you brought up there. I was going to say the Guillermo del Toro show, but it's just like, this is perfect.
I watched the first couple episodes of that.
Yeah, I only watched the first one, but I liked it so far. I'm definitely going to watch the rest because I enjoy anthology horror. Although, my man, Guillermo, like, you got to get someone to make you a suit better, man. He's a big dude. I get it. It's hard to find nice clothes as a big man, but like, you got to get that custom suit made.
Plus, you have the money, Guillermo del Toro.
Right. Yeah. It's like
you are Guillermo del Toro.
Suit. Yeah. I was like, Netflix could flipped out $3,500 for you to buy a very nice suit. Like, come on, it's part of the show. Yeah. I love the guy. I was like, man, you're wearing a suit that's not flattering you because it's just the wrong size. Get a suit that fits. Anyway, so yeah, I think like this. This is not as iconic as the Halloween score, but I think is really fantastic. Really, really good. I love the stuff that he does with like the synthesizer balanced with the traditional piano and other instrumentation. It's something a little different. I really like what he's doing as a composer in this one. But yeah, it doesn't quite necessarily all come together. But let's go through it and talk about some stuff. I do love this opening with the ship captain being like, "Aye, long ago, a boat tried to come to shore," and he's like giving this.
I'm also very confused by that because, like, if a boat, like, what's it called? When you make dry land, breach. Like, if a boat like breaches itself,
it's not. Well, we'll say breach, but there is a different word for it.
Or like they got tricked into going too close to shore and it crashed. But I'm like, so, but if they're close to shore, couldn't they have just gone to shore? Like,
yeah,
aren't they closer to shore and then closer to safety at that point?
Right. You would think if you
because I think in the remake they set them on fire.
Beach. It's not breach.
Beach. Thank you.
Yes. Okay.
In the remake, they like throw lantern, like lit old, like it's 100 years ago. So they throw lanterns onto the boat and set it on fire. So it's like
a Molotov cocktail style.
Yeah, exactly. So that is, those people are going to die. But like we tricked them into beaching themselves. It's like, okay, well, what?
I also like, he's describing it as like a shipwreck and then like how the fog came to be like as part of it. But like, how did the town engineer a shipwreck? That's like, seems incredibly challenging to me.
So other than the leprosy, this is also the plot of a Bob's Burgers episode.
Oh, yeah.
It's the land ship. What happened was the town, put a boat, brought a boat on land and rocked it as though it was on the water so that the enemies would think that was where the water went to and then crashed their ship. And then
So maybe they just turned the lighthouse off?
I think they said they used a campfire, so they must have turned the lighthouse off and put a campfire so that they would think.
Yeah,
I don't know. It's not super clear what the plan. How it works.
It's also, we're talking about something that allegedly took place in the 1800s. Although it is based on a real thing that happened. By the way,
1880.
If you knew that, okay. So navigational techniques a little less sophisticated in 1880.
It's also too intense of a ghost story for for children.
That is exactly what I was about to get to. Is like he's doing these and the timbers cracked and the men plunged to the deep where their bodies were torn to shreds. And it's like, these are like 8-year-olds.
They fell into the water and their eyes stared into the abyss as the salt water filled their lungs. And I was like, huh?
They did that thing that actors do where they gulp 2 times really hard and then open their eyes all the way to indicate drowning.
Like, sir, this isn't Arby's.
Their mouth. They open their mouth just slightly as it happens.
And let out a bubble. And it happened in 20 seconds because that's how long drowning takes.
They seem to run out of air very quickly.
That's my boyfriend and I were just talking about weird movie things. I can't remember what his was, but mine was oh yeah, how people drown in 5 seconds when drowning takes a couple minutes. It's not there's more to it than that.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to fault actors too hard for them. You didn't accurately depict what it's like to suck in 2 lungfuls of liquid and then choke on it, But
I just mean the timing, when it's just hold someone under the water and it's they wiggle for 5 seconds and then they stop and it's well, they're drowned now.
Yeah. I just love I kept thinking while watching this, what if there was a I keep wanting to say sea shanty man. I don't know why my brain is fixed on it on that phrase, but this
the Gordon's Fisherman.
Yeah, basically. But this campfire, what other movie should open with a campfire where a salty fisherman is "Arr, here be a story you're about to hear," and
you know what I do wish?
Other versions.
I wish Summer Rental opened with Scully doing the story.
Yes. Yeah, that would be that movie actually would be improved by it, and I like that movie, but that would be an improvement.
Yeah, because then it's just a cute little bookend of someone comes into his restaurant and he's like, "You remind me of the last people from last summer." Yeah, and then you can hear the steel drums as we fade into.
Yeah, and it's a picture on the wall of Scully and the family, all arms.
Yeah, exactly.
We zoom into the photo. Yeah, no, I'm with you. That would be very funny. But yeah, I was just trying to think of the most ridiculous movies I could think of as "Arr, here be the tale of our 16th president."
Inception.
Yeah.
I'm what serious D-bag needs to get the wind taken out of his sails?
Yeah.
The Shining opens.
Yeah, exactly. "Arr, here be the tale of a haunted hotel in Colorado." Yeah,
the landlocked state of Colorado.
Yes.
It'd be truly making no sense.
I be a snow pirate, you see.
I'm sure snow pirates is a thing in some sci-fi movie.
For sure.
There's snow sharks. Or avalanche sharks or something.
We ride the high seas of Colorado, and by that I mean the mountains, on our snowmobiles. Aye.
Yeah, very into that.
Yeah, I just kept thinking of what other, stupid movies I could come up with that would have this premise on them. "Arr, here be the tale, written by Mario Puzo, of the Italian mafia's rise and fall in these here United States."
Is that The Godfather? Mm-hmm. Okay. I was is it Gangs of New York? Is it the real one?
Oh, no. It's The Godfather.
I couldn't remember who wrote The Godfather, just that apparently there's long stretches of the book that are talking about someone's dick.
There is a whole subplot of the book version about how one man and one woman had the perfect genitalia for each other, and he was so big that he ruined her for others. and she has to go get.
And funnily enough, that got
this
dropped from the movie version.
But wait, you don't even get to the crazy part. She goes to have surgery to fix this problem.
Oh.
And then I think has like a thing with the doctor.
Okay. Sure.
Yeah. This is like there's like a long thing. Sonny is just like crazy well endowed in the book, and they are obsessed
Packing heat.
with it. Yeah. Anyway, enough about sea shanties and Sonny's member. We get John Carter's cameo, which he doesn't do too much.
Didn't know it was him, and I wrote, I love the hair stash combo. It's exactly what I'm going for. And then I learned it was him, and I was like, that tracks.
Yeah. I do like, I'm trying to say some nice things about the movie because it's not. I don't think this movie is worthy of just being like shredded like we did with Lethal Weapon over on the Patreon. No. But the intro is all atmosphere and mood, and that part to me felt very Carpenter. Like the opening 10-15 minutes ish of this is all.
He knows how to open a
setting.
movie.
Yeah, and that reminded me a lot of like the best powers of Halloween, which is like kind of exploring the small town and showing you all the people. It doesn't pay off as well here, I don't think, but it's like a lot of table setting here is being done, and I really like that.
And I think my problem is that just like they set up this story in the beginning, and then no one really talks about it because there's not time for anyone to talk about it until all of a sudden it's being like the petard is being kicked out from under the town, and it's like, well,
yes,
I need to know that this town like gives a shit about this story beyond this salty old man on the beach with children. Like, also, is this a camp situation? Like, are parents paying to let their kids spend the night on the beach with the old sea captain? And why is that a thing?
Right. This dude does have a real Scully vibe about him. It's like, is he a ship captain or does he just own a seafood restaurant and dresses like one?
He might. Or watch it just be like Vacation Bible School. See it.
Yeah, exactly. It could totally be that. But yeah, I keep coming back to the thing you were saying about like the gold and the money is like, it's way more interesting if the people they're going after are the descendants of the people who benefited from it, right? So it's like 5 pillars of the town, and then the 6th person is the kid because he ended up with this gold coin and he's just kind of like caught up in it.
Yeah, I think that works a lot better. This is a situation where I think remakes of something like, obviously not the glossy 2000s one, but like remakes of something like this where like the bones are solid. It just needs a little finessing, and then I think you'd have a more solid situation.
And this would be a great example of that too, because it's very recognizable. Like people know who John Carpenter is, and it's like, oh, they're remaking this John Carpenter movie. He'd have the name value. It seems like a perfect candidate for it. I agree with you. Watched a really not good horror movie in October that was like this woman whose family had connections to this like small coastal town, and she had to go back there for some contrived reason. And the reason that
the bank was foreclosing on the Christmas tree farm.
No, it's a horror movie.
I know, but can you imagine?
There's no Christmas.
The Hallmark channel.
You could do a very good horror twist on a Hallmark movie setup, I think, and I'm surprised no one has done that yet.
But
like the attempts at spoofing the Hallmark thing that I've seen have been atrocious.
The only one that was good was the game show SNL did like 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah, I'm talking about movie. Not
that's
any jokes about it. Yeah.
But would you, if you were writing the Hallmark movie, do you go, the person visiting the town is self-aware that everything is creepy and perfect and like pristine and it feels like
it's like Stepford?
Or do you go like, there's just a murderer there and they're like, I'm inherited my parents' Christmas tree farm, and they don't know that there's like a killer hiding in the Christmas trees.
I think it's both. I think it's like the newcomer is like,
oh, so it's an it situation. The town is complicit.
Well, no, I think it's like a Hot Fuzz where it's like, like without the town. But no, I'm saying I want it to be Hot Fuzz, but the town isn't in on it. They're just dumb.
Oh, okay.
So like, there's a killer, and the police, like the woman is like. That comes to her old town, the small town is like, someone's been murdered, and the cop comes and he's like, doesn't even understand the concept of a murder, and he's like, well, this person slipped and fell, and he's doing the Hot Fuzz without the like
unintentionally.
Yeah.
Okay, I think I like the creepier, like glossy and complicit. I like that element better.
Yeah, I mean, but I think that just because it's like if you make that movie, I'm gonna be like, yeah, I've seen Hot Fuzz, and you, sir, are no Hot Fuzz.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you got to do you got to get away from it. So that's my 2 cents. But anyway, this movie was this woman being like compelled to get there and become trapped, and all of the people in the town are actually like ghosts that can't leave, and they were like her family was like one of the original founders of the town, and therefore she's not allowed to leave, and they like pulled her back in, and it's like all this it's not a good movie, but
what is it called?
In fact,
do you remember?
I don't, but I can go troll through my letterbox later and find it. But it was like, I remember turning to my wife and being like, if this woman had just insisted that they do this over email, she would not have been trapped there for eternity, because they just wanted her to like sign a document. And it was like, you have to come.
She's DocuSign.
Yeah, so I said, I was like, if you were just like, no, DocuSign it, or I'm not coming there to do this. It was just, I don't know.
Was it was it like an impressive amount of like bequeathment or whatever? No, I know that's not the correct word.
No, it was like, it was like something with somebody's remains. Like she didn't want to be buried there, and they had to do this paperwork. It was very dumb. It's not a good movie, but I'm talking about it because it had this element of like these creatures from the ocean, and they were like attacking the founders of the town and down the line of the founders. That's all I was getting to, is like, I think that's where this lines up with that.
Yeah, that's sort of what they did with that puppet movie that's terrible.
The one from Henson?
No, I don't know what that is. Dead Silence, I think it's called.
That's a puppet movie?
Yeah, it's about puppets. It's not a I'm sorry, it's not a movie with puppet actors. It is a movie about puppets.
Oh, I thought you were talking about that like Melissa McCarthy like Muppets, but they're raunchy thing.
No.
Confused.
Dead Silence was what James Wan pooped out after the studio was like, "You made Saw, you got to make another one," and he was like, "I don't have another one," and they're like, "Do it." So he was like, "I don't know." He's
figured it out now.
He acknowledges that is how he made this. He was like, "They made me do it. I didn't want to do it. It's not good." So that is not disrespect to James Wan. I'm quoting him.
Is the poster for that movie like a thing? Okay, putting its finger to its lips. Okay. Anyway, let's get back on track. Jamie Lee Curtis and Tom Atkins
with no mustache.
It
was very weird seeing with no mustache.
A mere 23 years apart, these two.
You know what? The mustache ages him because he looked younger without it, weirdly enough.
She is 22. He is 45.
Yeah.
That's funny because Halloween 3 is only, 2 years later?
Mm-hmm. I think so.
And he looks ancient in that movie compared to the young.
Right. Because Halloween, it's 3, not 2. Yes.
Yeah.
It's the mustache, I think.
Yeah, maybe. So he picks her up hitchhiking, and they do like very clearly like, oh, they're going to have sex dialogue. And I was like, wow, they are extremely far apart in age. Tom Atkins is apparently what all horror directors thought a hunk looked like in 1980 to 1984.
It's like, no offense, but no.
It's like, there's no one else available. Like, no, again, I like Tom Atkins, so what the hell are we doing here?
Very bizarre. All the glass in his truck explodes as they're driving.
The fog hates glass.
Yeah, the fog. It's very wishy-washy because sometimes the fog will break glass. Sometimes it just knocks on the door. Sometimes it can break the door down.
I think the fog hates glass. I think the creatures knock on the door.
But then, so they knock on the door, and then only one time then they start breaking down the doors. And I was like, well, why weren't you doing this before?
I think, and again, the movie doesn't tell you this.
They had to gain power by killing people?
And I think there's also like a time limit on this. Like, I think they have to get this done and get to their six victims, or they don't get to keep coming back to claim 6 victims.
Like a Jeepers Creepers?
Like the devil is basically like, all right, you guys can go up there. You got 48 hours to claim these souls. And by God, if you don't get them, you're never leaving again. It's
the thing. They're only so the first night they're only active from midnight to 1 a.m., which is when the original beaching happened.
Yes.
And then the next night it's just like, we can go whenever, wherever. And I'm like, well, hang on. What are the rules?
Okay, so night 1, you get 1 hour. Night 2, as long as you've claimed at least one soul, you'll be able to boost that time for an hour for every soul you claim. So, my recommendation, you hit a multi-soul situation on the first night. Then, you'll give yourself extra time to clean up the messes on the subsequent evenings. Are you taking notes? Because I'm not going to repeat myself, and these rules are extremely specific.
It's like the complicated Cinderella everyone forgets about when there's multiple balls.
I don't know anything about this.
There's a version of the original, like, there's two versions of, like, classic versions.
Yeah.
The one that you all know that the Disney version used. And then there's a different one where it was, the prince was hosting a festival, and over the festival was over the course of, like, multiple nights. And so she kept meeting him and dancing with him and then leaving him.
That's way stupider.
It is. And then
even in a pre-cell phone world, like, he couldn't have been like, oh, I never got your name last night. Please give it to me now.
Yep. And so that's the one.
Did this prince have a head injury?
I mean, maybe he's got the rap. And then it's multiple nights. And then he, at least in Into the Woods, he puts tar all over the stairs. So when she tries to run away, she can't. And that's why she leaves her shoe behind. Because it's stuck.
Wow.
It's stuck there.
So she does like a horror, like a scream queen. Like the shoe gets stuck. She's running barefoot instead.
Uh-huh.
And
Yeah.
Quentin Tarantino's like lasciviously shooting her feet as she runs with mud on them.
Staring.
Yeah.
Camera fucking her feet.
It never goes above mid-calf. It's just chasing her down the road.
Yeah. It's like the other weird version of Cinderella that no one talks about because you don't need that many. You can just do the one.
No.
We get it.
It's extremely complicated for no reason. Oh, I forgot another rule. You can make your gold coins turn into wood, and then that wood can turn into other wood, and you can put scary things on tape recorders. But that's only in the daylight hours if you've collected at least 3 of the 6 required
It really
souls.
does sound like a complicated board game. Like, the rules of this movie are just the worst board game that your friend brings out.
That is exactly what I was aiming for, so I'm glad it was coming across. I was like, the devil is explaining the most tedious board game you've ever played. And I say that as a person who loves board games.
I love board games, but like
50% of them, I'm like, for fuck's sake.
Like, that's why I love when a board game has been played on a YouTube channel, and I'm like, great,
Sure.
I can just play this video, and in the first 2 minutes, they explain it neatly with visuals.
Yes.
And it's not me on page 8 referring to page 2 that then has to go to the glossary at the back of the book.
I have found those videos and played them in lieu of explaining it myself so people can see.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I just point to the pieces on the board and stuff, but I'm like, just watch the video.
Mm-hmm.
So I really want to talk about, I think Adrianne Barbeau is good in this, but
She got such a sexy voice when she does her, like, when she turns it on. I love it.
But that's exactly what I wanted to talk about, because like the seductress radio host is such a bizarre thing. Like, I don't know that it still exists. I mean, maybe Delilah's still out there.
She's probably the only thing lately.
Yeah. And I always remember, even as a kid, finding Delilah so weird, because it is like sort of flirtatiously sexual, where she's like, tonight I got a song going out to Jenny in Arkansas from Derek, and Derek says, Jenny, you're the only one I ever want to have. Here's I Love You So Very Much by Martha and the Vondells. And it's just like, I obviously choked on the song part there and I got phlegmy, so my apologies. But it's like, who is this for? Like, why is she, like, everyone, all the single men in this town over the age of 40 are like listening to this radio show in probably by themselves, let's say, to be
with a tissue box.
Polite, but by themselves, no other people in the room.
Yeah, and it is weird because she talks. At first, I thought she was saying that she was on air 24 hours a day in the beginning when she's talking, because she's like flirting with the
What is this,
weatherman.
an OnlyFans stream?
Yes, she's flirting with the weatherman, and he's like, "Well, hey, let's meet up at the town, just Centennial." Yeah.
Centennial.
The town Centennial tomorrow, because it's kind of implied that they've never met face to face. They've only talked on the phone.
100% they have not.
And she goes, "Oh, I can't. I have to run the radio." And I'm like, "Do you though? Because I'm pretty sure it's only for the people in this town, and they're all gonna be at the Centennial.
Logic would dictate that you would be covering the Centennial for the radio.
Yeah, you would be there with your little setup and your microphone.
So that you could, like, play it back later or whatever.
Yeah. This is definitely a town where, like, there are 70 people in town, and they are all there except for the old people who are already asleep.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it reminded me a lot of Midnight Mass, or I suppose Midnight Mass probably draws a lot from this. Okay, just the whole, like, small fishing town thing. You would like.
Is it a coastal town?
Based on that stuff. Oh, it's an island town, baby.
Brah, brah, brah. All right.
You have to get to the mainland by boat, and there are no cars on the island. It is isolated.
Did I tell you my boyfriend's friend? She does very well for herself. She was, like, in charge of all the docents of a major museum up in Massachusetts.
Mm-hmm.
Bought a house to do fixer-upper stuff because she's very handy. And then she was like, well, I got a new job at a different museum that pays me even more, so I'm moving. She was like, look at all the houses I'm looking at and help me pick, like, give your opinion. And I was like, this one's an island. And she was like, yeah, that's kind of my front runner. And it's literally just, and it's not in, like, a tropical island sense. It's just, it is a small island with, like, 2 houses on it.
Yeah.
And you can only access it by, like, watercraft of some kind. So you have, like,
is there like a garage at the port?
Yeah, you have a parking space. You have, like, parking for you and whoever lives there on dry land, but you need to, like, kayak or, like, ferry yourself there. I was like, I love the idea, but also that sounds nightmarish.
Yeah, wildly impractical. That is literally a horror movie setting.
Yeah.
Speaking of boats, we're on a fishing boat here. This is they're taking the devil's recommendation of make sure you hit a multi-soul spot on your first attempt because they massacre the men on this fishing boat. Really gnarly kills. Also, I realized after watching this is
also there were 12 minutes of credits rolling in this movie. The credits ran for 12 minutes, and I was like, Jesus Christ.
You keep thinking the credits are over, and then, like, scenes happen, and then more credits come, and I'm like, well, okay, what are we doing here?
At what point do we stop?
I'm imagining that being, like, a bit in the Naked Gun type spoof movie, where it's like, they stop, and then, like, a scene happens, and then more credits start going. And
someone trips on them.
Yeah, and, like, the whole movie is credits. Like, the movie...
I would love that.
Like, the very final scene is punctuated with, like, and featuring blank, and then the final line.
Or directed by.
Yeah. And then the actual credits begin. These murders are really brutal, but I was going to say, this is the same gimmick as the Pirates of the Caribbean movie, right? Or at least the first one?
No. So in Pirates of the Caribbean, they were undead pirates who became skeletons in moonlight, but they looked normal outside of moonlight.
But wasn't there something about the gold and the gold kept them alive? Because these creatures.
So they stole cursed Aztec gold.
Yeah, okay.
And then they had to recover. That's why they were pirating, because they had to recover all of the lost stolen gold.
Got it. Okay.
And that's why they wanted Elizabeth Swann and thought she was Will Turner.
Got it. Okay, that makes sense. But yeah, so they're it's a small fishing vessel, and I thought there were more than 3 people on this boat. It was weird to me that they only. You
thought there should have been more than 3?
Yeah. Just like it's because like 2 of them are like in a bunk, right? At one point.
So based on my very limited knowledge of lobster YouTube videos, this size boat only has 3 people on it for the lobstering in Maine.
But those are not typically overnight boats, right? Like
this wasn't supposed to be overnight. They were supposed to come back.
Oh, the fog trapped them.
Yeah, because that's what Tom Atkins said. He's like, he's like, I've never been so drunk. We've never been so drunk. We've not been able to come back to shore before morning.
So that part I knew, but I thought that was just like explaining the like confusion of the murders. But they seem to be out rather late for doing this job. Is all I thought. Yeah. I thought my impression of lobstering again from YouTube or crabbing from Deadliest Catch. Deadliest Catch not really analogous here, but like it seems like a morning job. Seems like you do that in the very early morning.
Yeah, I mean they're probably not lobstering in although are there California lobsters?
Maybe it's Dungeness crabs.
Maybe. So maybe they're not. Maybe they like finished working for the day and like, let's hang out on the ocean and crack a few cold ones.
Not go home to our wives or girlfriends or whatever, or our sad hungry man dinners if we're single.
I mean, this is firmly a Gordon's fisherman town.
It honestly reminds me a lot.
Hungry fishermen.
Do you remember The Perfect Storm at all?
I remember that I fell asleep during that movie.
Okay. They're just like everybody in that movie is playing like a real like borderline scumbag guy. Like they all seem like hearts of gold, but just like, you know, functional alcoholics, lots of hungry men.
Is that Clooney?
Yep. And John C. Reilly, and I forget who else.
Oh, but yeah, I don't know if we told that story in the podcast, but we went to see that movie late at night, and I was young and maybe sick. I don't remember.
7. You would have been 7. Late at night seems bonkers.
It wasn't.
No, Perfect Storm is 97. You would have been 5. That seems really bonkers.
Well, maybe it was at the second run theater, so I don't know. But either way, we went, and it was later at night, so I'm going to say probably like 8 o'clock.
Okay.
Maybe I can't imagine our parents would go to a movie later than 8.
Yeah.
It was late enough that like I was tired, and like I said, maybe sick. I can't remember if I like wasn't feeling well, but I fell asleep like basically as the boat gets sucked up by that giant wave, like the poster moment. I fell asleep.
Yeah, which is wild because that movie is so loud.
Yeah, I can fall asleep anywhere.
Yeah,
that has never been a problem for me.
So we got a big problem here because Adrianne Barbeau is like talking to the weather station. They're trying to figure out what's going on with this boat. And then Adrianne Barbeau, in talking to the weatherman, is like, the fog's moving the opposite direction you say it should be. That's weird, right?
The wind is moving against the fog, and it's still rolling.
And the weatherman's like, you dumb broad.
Like, that's weird. Anyways. So they all get ghost murdered. All the men.
Really violently. So they're
Atkins and Jamie Lee Curtis have boned.
Yep, they're having a postcoital. Let me look at your sketchbook, you young artist type.
Yeah, her character is I am hitchhiking from Seattle to no, Seattle's Washington, from like San Francisco to Vancouver. I think is what she said.
That's right. She's going up the coast. Yeah,
that's her character. I'm an artist who is hitchhiking to Canada.
Well, I saw in doing some of the research that she apparently was explicitly cast by Carpenter in this because she was only getting like Scream Queen roles, and he was like trying to give her something else to do. So it's funny that in my version, I'm like, just either make her the radio and skip Adrianne Barbeau. Like, I don't know what you do, but like this, whatever. But he basically was just like, I'll give you something to do that's not be, running in terror. And then
the poster
what she does is run in terror.
I mean, she doesn't do a lot in the movie. We'll say that, but the poster is literally her screaming.
Yes. But so anyway, they're postcoitally looking at her sketches, which whoever actually drew them, quite good. I thought the art was nice. But there's a knock at the door, and he gets up to go investigate, and then
it's 1 a.m. by the way.
Yes, it's like I don't answer the door at 1 a.m. unless there are red and blue flashing lights outside the house,
or I've ordered Grubhub.
That's also a possibility.
Or I can smell the Chinese food.
Yeah.
But he's got like what looks like a feudal Japanese paper door.
The only time I've ever had anyone knock on my door that late unannounced was someone who was like screaming for someone who they thought lived in the house. And I was like, wrong house. There's no one here by that name. And they were like just screaming. And I was like, I'm calling the cops. And then they ran away.
I genuinely was afraid that was going to happen at my place because we've had process servers show up at our door.
Oh boy.
And like we put a label on our mailbox because I was like, I'm tired. We've been here for over 2 years and we still get this person's mail. Yeah. And like, it's clearly like judgy mail and like last notice from like Department of Transportation mail. But this guy, he was like, we saw him on the doorbell because we have the video doorbell, and he's clearly like reading the names and like looking at the names on his thing, and he's kind of like, huh. And my boyfriend opened the door, and he was like, "Does this person live here?" And we were like, "Nope, has not for several years. I don't have any way to contact them, but even though we could call our landlord, but I was like, sorry, dude, you gotta go back to your boss and tell him they do not live here. Find something else."
Wow. So yes, I cut you off. He goes to answer the door here.
It basically looks like a Japanese feudal paper door, as we like to say.
Oh, yeah. It's a cheap house.
All fog and a silhouette of someone knocking. And his first thought isn't like, better not.
Yeah.
Like any sane person. I guess he's a white man in a movie, so like...
Yeah. And that kind of Atkins.
That kind of confidence.
Well, he's also Tom Atkins in a horror movie, so that's like beyond white guy confidence. That's Tom Atkins horror movie confidence. This was basically James Bond by Sean Connery.
Remember they used to be the joke, I want all the confidence of a mediocre white man. I want all the confidence of a mediocre older white man in an 80s horror movie.
Specifically, I wanted all the confidence of Tom Atkins. That's what I want.
As soon as the clock strikes 1, the ghost disappears, or the shape disappears.
The clock glass also breaks?
Yeah, there's a lot of glass breaking. There's also like mini earthquakes throughout town and like random.
Yes.
And nothing is cohesive. It's not like the grocery store is the spot where the town mayor used to live, or I don't know.
You know what else this movie needs that it doesn't have? Some animals freaking out.
Yeah, they told me a dog barked.
Yeah, I need a lot of crazy barking and meowing and what else? Snakes slithering up walls. Like I need the animals. What else? I want the animal pets, the various pets of this town, like going ape shit. I want them like this
or
is
just
a
like
problem.
Go to a shelter and like open a food, like throw some food around and let the animals go nuts for a little bit. Film that.
Yeah, exactly. I want the like cages rattling and the like, "Arr!" Like give me all of that. You don't recall the famous scenes in other film and television when the snakes slither up the walls when the bad shit's going down?
Shockingly, I cannot. That might have been an Amityville.
You don't recall? I
do not. So yeah, this is where I was like, okay, so the ghosts can only attack from midnight to 1 a.m. And then I went, well, hang on. I'm about 30 minutes into this movie, so that seems like, how many more nights are there going to be?
Right. Now, if you recall, depending on the number of souls you take, you boost your number of hours in the witching hour.
This is when the haunt begins, and you must leave the room with the book, read your specific page, and come back.
Each soul you take adds 1 hour to the witching hour. However, on subsequent nights, this effect is doubled.
If you are playing as Elizabeth Bathory, this effect is doubled. And if you are playing as the Blob from the feature film The Blob, it is halved, and you must do double the work.
If you see a snake slither on a wall because of your actions, you lose 1 turn.
And then a piece of the ghost. Here's what's crazy. So like I said, we started with Salty Sam telling the shanty story of the ship, the Elizabeth Dane. Mm-hmm. And then a piece of wood that says Dane and clearly looks like a piece from the hull of an old ship washes ashore. Yes. Yeah. And the kid doesn't say anything about it, even though he just heard this story. And then Adrianne Barbeau is like, oh, that's kind of old driftwood, whatever. And I'm like,
yeah.
Well, I thought this was supposed to be important.
It's a piece of a goddamn boat. Come on, people.
Because she keeps saying, my son found a piece of driftwood. And I was like, it is clearly a piece of the hull of the famous ship.
Right.
Like this town's whole bread and butter.
Oh, by the way, famous Carpenter part of the Carpenter menagerie of actors, roster of actors. What's
Troop?
Thank you. Is George Buck Flower, who's in the Back to the Future movies as a bum as well. He was the guy in They Live who like goes over to the alien side and is.
Who is he in this?
Up. He's one of the fishermen. I didn't recognize him either. Yeah.
Or a ghost fisherman.
Yeah. No, dies.
Oh.
I didn't recognize him either. But also, while we're just picking up random strays here, Tom Atkins' character's name is Nick Castle, which is the name of the man who
didn't they use that name before, or not before? But like, I feel like Carpenter also used Nick Castle's name in another movie.
I think you're right, and he just apparently just like all the characters in this movie are friends of his, which I thought was quite funny.
Yeah. Also, Adrianne Barbeau's son asks for a stomach pounder and a Coke, and I was like, I don't know what this is.
I had to know, and so I started like Googling this, and apparently on the commentary, Carpenter is like, yeah, this is just something one of my friends would say, and it was a reference to something completely like not food related or anything. He just liked the phrase stomach pounder, and so he like just put it in the movie. And he's like, it delights me that people have obsessed over what the hell that means. It's like, yeah, no shit, man. You're very famous.
I was like, what is it, like some old candy or like some snack food I didn't know about?
Some of the suggestions I saw were like a quarter pounder cheeseburger, which I thought was wild.
Well, because he says that and she goes after lunch. So those people are not paying attention to the movie because there's no way he'd be like, go get a quarter pounder with cheese. And she goes after lunch.
Yeah, yeah.
Tom Atkins knew the murdered fisherman, and we meet Janet Leigh.
That's right. And she has an assistant played by
Nancy Loomis.
Yes. Also, I think she goes by Keys now. I think Loomis was her acting name. Who I was like, man, I really like her as Annie in the original Halloween. I think her performance is really good. I like her in this. And I was like, man, what the heck happened to her? Like, why'd she stop acting? And I looked it up and it's just like, she had a kid and she took some time off to have, raise the kid. Then she went back to the auditions and was doing that. And she was like, I hate this. I want to be a sculptor. And so now she's a sculptor and she also teaches it.
And I'm sure it was very easy for her to try and get back in as an older woman having had a kid. I'm sure. I'm sure the industry is very kind about that.
I'm not trying to poo-poo it. It was like she did not talk about it from a stamp, and she has many opportunities to say, no, men are trash, whatever, or whatever it was. But she talked about it as just like, yeah, I had been sculpting, like with my kids, I was like playing with them, and the sculpting that I do kind of came out of like doing the activities with my kids when they were little, and I just was like, this is better. I like it more. So I just didn't want to do it anymore. But it shocks me that like with the wave of directors that have come up after, like the ones who are fans of Halloween, and so like, people directing movies in the 90s and early 2000s, like none of these dudes talked you out of retirement for like a small part in something. That's crazy to me.
Well, when you have PJ Souls willing to do anything for any paycheck,
right?
I feel like they're like, why bother with Nancy Loomis? We can get PJ Souls for a ham sandwich.
It's like you just get them both in there. It's just crazy to me. Yeah. And now, like, you're telling me Jason Blum has not figured out something that they can stick Nancy Keys in for a second.
Any of the 3 Halloween movies they fucking made.
Well, that would be weird because she died.
Yeah, she looks exactly the same, and everyone would know that the woman who,
horror dudes would lose their fucking minds if they put dead people in as new people. They would be screaming about it. Come on.
They should be screaming because the movie's terrible.
Well, agreed, but they're the most annoying people on earth. The first one was good. I stand by it.
The first one was good. And then the last 2 were just so bad. I've seen people like doing their 2022 best horror movies list, and people are putting that on there. And I'm like,
if you do more than 10, you kind of have to put it on there, don't you?
I think there were 10 horror movies that came out in 22.
That's what I'm saying. I said if you do more than 10.
No, they're doing their top 10.
Yeah, no,
and they're putting it on there, and like half of them are like, and yes, I put Halloween Ends on there, and I will not be discussing. I'm like, yeah, because you know it's bad. You don't want to discuss it because you have nothing to say about it.
Yeah, because it's hot trash. Come on.
We have Michael Myers at home. No, you have Corey at home.
Barbarian
was rad. I've heard really good things about X and Pearl. They're on my list.
X is excellent. I haven't seen Pearl yet.
It was X 22 or 21.
I believe they're both 20. Maybe X is 21, but barely. Maybe it's straight Octobers or consecutive Octobers.
Oh yeah, that's been on my list.
Scream. Hello.
Scream. 5 Cream. Yeah. Love 5 Cream. Black Phone. I really enjoyed.
Really good. Yeah. There's no way Halloween Ends goes into the top 10. That's just ridiculous. Get out of my face with that.
Yeah.
Anyway. So they visit Hal Holbrook, who's playing the priest, and he is the only person in the town that is actually like a descendant of the people, which is what we had talked about before.
He's also has like the appropriate response to all of this. Like he learns today that his great grandfather or whatever murdered people for their money because they had leprosy. And he's like guilt ridden about it because he's like, this is awful. This town is built on like all the appropriate responses.
Yeah.
And I was like,
built on a foundation of lies.
Yes. And I was like, okay. And then he feels like he's the only one that gets murdered out of the main people. And I was like,
right.
Okay, but like he's the only one that like learned the truth and had the correct response.
I will say his doesn't feel like I feel like he goes into it with his eyes wide open, where he's like, I am atoning, like in a real religious-y way, like I am atoning for the sins of my family. Like it's like a sacrifice is the wrong word, but it's sort of in the same vein. But
it's
like
in the ballpark.
Yeah, and like I totally understand what you're saying. Like he probably gets the most brutal death, despite the fact that he is trying to make amends, which I do think is really interesting. But he definitely approaches it in a completely different way. You're totally right. And to back up to what you said before, like your version of this, where Janet Leigh knows the score, is way more interesting. If he's like, no, this is awful. Our families deserve to be like, we should tell everyone about this and atone for it.
Mm-hmm. And she's like, she can like wield political power and be like, well, maybe it's time for a new deacon or whatever. I don't know how churches work, but like,
yeah. No, that's only if you touch kids.
No, that's they shuffle you off to a different town.
That's what I just said. That's what I meant.
Well, I wasn't saying shuffle him. I was saying she just boots him out. You're fired.
Yes, well, I was ascribing it to the same shuffle him to other places. Anyway, Hal Holbrook, also very good actor.
I always like in these kind of movies where it's like 100-year-old ghost was wronged, and I'm like, they were white people. Those are the ghosts we think are going to come for us 100 years later. Okay,
maybe it's a situation where like the ghosts of people who were wronged in other ways are just like, the best revenge is living well.
You can have it.
Yeah, I see what you're doing to poison the earth.
They put Sacagawea on a gold coin. They definitely feel bad about everything. A coin nobody uses.
I have one in my wallet.
But you don't spend it. That's what I mean. Like,
no.
They basically made a commemorative coin.
Yeah, they did. I mean, to be fair, no one uses any coins.
I know, but it's just funny that like that was an atonement, was a Sacagawea coin that essentially is not in circulation because nobody actually spends them.
Yeah. So we're doing some cross cuts with Hal Holbrook and then Jamie Lee Curtis and Tom Atkins, who are both doing some research. Or sorry, they're on the boat trying to discover the mystery, and Holbrook is like, he's got the book
telling the whole story, and I was just like, annoyed that I was like, oh well, this isn't exciting. Like, we know what happened, we know why the ghosts are doing it. Like, there's no mystery now. It's just we get to watch a bunch of silhouettes wiggle around.
Yeah, I do like the makeup and creature designs. Rob Bottin is apparently part of the team for that, which I thought was neat.
I thought it needed a little more detail. Like, if you're going to be mostly in silhouette, you need distinctive shapes.
I liked the eyes a lot. I think that did a lot of work for me.
Yeah, they did. They weren't there enough though. They weren't like in every scene.
I'm not trying to disagree with you. I'm just saying I think that's what worked for me ultimately.
They should have like talked to an animator, because that's what people always say about like animation, is that like character shapes are crucial. Like SpongeBob, all the characters are very unique, specific silhouettes that you could like pick out of a lineup, and it sort of endears them to you. And this is sort of everyone just kind of looks like a Scooby-Doo villain in silhouette.
I also really like the fake out jump scare that this builds to. So it's Atkins,
the double jump,
Curtis. Yeah. And there's this locker, and we see the latch on the locker sliding open. And so you're like waiting for the locker to pop open to be the jump scare, but they don't do the jump scare thing there. The locker pops open. Well, the locker pops open and they're like, what? And then the corpse comes out, and the corpse.
Oh, I thought they were both
thing.
Jump scary.
But the corpse gets the big like bang on the soundtrack.
I thought they were both had a sting to them.
Interesting. Well, maybe it was just that I'm the jump scariest person alive, so the corpse got me, and the first one didn't. So maybe it's like they want you prepared and like ready for the first one, so that the second one gets you. It was just good misdirection.
Yeah.
This is the board in the
so yeah, Adrianne Barbeau she drives up to her lighthouse radio station.
Yes.
That is down. It looks like it's at sea level, which seems useless in terms of notifying people of ships.
Yeah.
And also for later what happens doesn't make sense. She walks down like a mile of stairs. That's like the steepest stairs I've ever seen.
Yeah, it's a bonkers work environment that she has signed herself up for. Also, I don't necessarily want like 20 minutes of this, but if you gave me just, I don't know, 2 to 3 minutes explaining why she decided to buy this radio station in the middle of nowhere that clearly is not making money.
Yeah, that's what I'm so baffled by her decisions.
Yeah.
But later she's like a lookout eye in the sky on the town, and I was like, well, she walks down from a bluff to get to the lighthouse. So how is she overlooking the town?
It seems like a down and up situation, but also it's less that she's able to see the town and more that because there's no cell phones, someone can get to a phone and call her and she can broadcast it onto the radio.
No, I just mean later when she's literally a traffic copter later in the movie. She's like,
right,
hey, we got some fog rolling down 985.
That's only because
southbound.
People are calling things into her.
They are?
Yeah, like the dude calls her and is giving her the weather reports, and then she realizes what's going on with her kid, and she starts like trying to get someone to help her kid.
Yeah, but I'm talking about early. There's that point when she like leads them all to the church. That she's like, we don't see anyone call in.
She can see the fog, so she just knows like where the. So okay, I'm gonna. You know how like Delaware like kicks out onto that severe tip. Yeah. So if you imagine that the lighthouse is out on the tip of the J, and then the town is like further along up the inlet, she doesn't have to be necessarily very high up to be able to have like eyes on the town.
She's going like the fog is headed down Main Street, headed east, and it's turning left onto Franklin, and like she's being.
It's not that specific.
She's being a little too specific. It's not like, oh, it's rolling in on the... She's not like saying, oh, fog's heading in. She's like giving turn-by-turn navigational directions for the fucking fog.
I think it's like the town only has 100 people and 9 buildings, so she's able to be like, get to the opposite end of town, go to the church. That is what I think is happening. But
agree to disagree.
Your thing is much funnier, so I don't want to shit on it.
She's literally saying, in 400 feet, the fog will turn left. In 200 feet, continue straight, fog. You don't have to interrupt my music to tell me that.
The fog has picked up 5 of the required 6 souls, which means it's able to operate for 7 hours tonight.
Oh God, she's a DM. I hate it.
Hey, Adrian, love the show. First time, long time. I just want to let you know, fill you in a little bit about what's happening here. And it's a lot longer for Soul Collection on night 3. So, be aware that your kid is host.
So we cut back to Father Malone, I think his name is, finishing.
This podcast would be full 30 minutes longer if I didn't, edit out all the times when I had to stop after doing the voice and cough and take a drink of water. I
do that for a lot of my voices.
Peel back the curtain.
Father Malone literally is like, we roasted them a lot, we killed them all, and stole their gold. And I couldn't read any further. And I was like, seems like you read pretty far. Like, yeah. I don't know what comes after that you couldn't read, buddy.
The part after that where they're like, and then we took the money and we built a town, and I used the money and I rubbed it all over my body like a naughty boy.
like, did they eat the body? Like, what happened after?
Yeah. You read the part where they committed heinous murder, and you were like, "That's enough for me." It's like, well, you didn't stop.
There's nothing after that.
Anything? Yeah, that's the end of the book.
And then Janet Leigh goes, "I think you're taking all this a little too seriously." And I was like, well, how seriously should he take this, Janet? It's a diary of his great-grandfather. Why would he lie? Who lies in a diary?
We should all pack a suitcase and go to this nice motel I like.
And this part has really cool effects. Adrianne has the piece of the boat in her radio station, and water starts like weeping out of it.
It's so cool.
I want to know how they did it.
No idea how they did this. Yeah. My only thought is like somehow the board is actually a sponge and they were just like pumping water through it, but I can't figure it out.
I was wondering maybe if they drilled like tiny holes and used syringes.
Yeah, that would make sense. But it's a big stream of water that comes out too.
It's a lot, but and it's not a reverse shot because the board is completely bone dry and then the water seeps out and soaks the wood.
It's amazing. It's a really cool effect.
And the water leaks all over the equipment and makes the radio go weird and say something creepy that I can't remember.
6 must die.
6 must die. But why 6? Did they? I believe
there were 6 members of the town involved in the thing.
Oh.
Or no.
Because I'm assuming there's more than 6. There were more than 6 lepers on the boat.
Oh man, I looked it up and then I forgot it. Damn
That's
it.
okay.
I think it's the town thing. I will verify this because I also wasn't sure and looked it up.
And then there's this awesome fire explosion, and when she puts out the fire, the board is completely unscathed, and it's really cool.
So cool, yeah. I also love the general design of this office.
Mm-hmm.
It's just,
I love a lighthouse,
like a real lighthouse. Yeah.
Then we cut to Jamie Lee, Tom Atkins, and a coroner, I think, looking at the dead body they found on the ship. And they go, the coroner goes, "Hey, Tom Atkins, we're here in the room with the dead body. Why don't you and I step outside and talk and leave Jamie Lee Curtis here alone with a dead body of a man she's never met before?" And it's like, no, You say, "Jamie, would you mind stepping outside and giving us some privacy to talk?" Like that is the logical step here.
Yeah, it's bonkers. And then like when the corpse reanimates, it's like, well, of course it did. What do you think was going to happen?
But even beyond that, like, why would you leave a person alone in a room with a corpse?
Right.
It's not like they're
a civilian.
It's a civvy.
Yeah.
She gets attacked by the cadaver.
It is 6 conspirators. I'm sorry. There were 6 people in the town.
Because he grabs a scalpel and falls on the ground and seems to have carved a 3 as he fell.
Correct.
Somehow.
Yeah, they killed the 3 fishermen on the boat.
So they go. There's some really cool glowing fog shots. And then Adrianne Barbeau says something on the radio about what's it called, the seaweed, the boat.
I don't remember the name of the boat.
There was a name of the boat.
There.
She talks about it, and then Tom Atkins calls in and is like, "Hey, what are you talking about?" And so they get to talking, and she goes, "Meet me here," and they leave, and he goes, "Do you want to come with me?" And she goes, and Jamie Lee Curtis goes, "Yeah," and then takes her beer bottle as they walk out of the bar to presumably go drive somewhere.
Yes, I love it. Also, I want to talk about this bar for 4 to 6 hours because it's
a good bar.
Amazing. It is, but
it's the same bar from Halloween 3, basically.
That's exactly what I was gonna say. Why is Tom Atkins only in these like weird daytime drunk bars?
Well,
the guy behind the bar at this bar has like
the tender.
The bartender. Yeah. He doesn't say a word. He has no dialogue. He doesn't do anything particularly like noteworthy as an extra. And yet the way that he like is leaning on the bar as if it is the only thing keeping him from being a slumped mass on the floor of just like general sad choice about where his life is at is amazing. Like this is the best nonverbal background acting I've seen in eternity. I don't know where they got this guy. I don't know. Like he should have had
They didn't pay him enough. That's for sure.
He is just like the world's weariest man leaning on this bar. And he's got like a beer. I think he might take a sip or 2 of it over the course of this scene. But man, it's so good. It's so good. The design of this bar, it just looks like the diviest dive bar with like your 3 professional.
I'm surprised it's not smokier.
Oh, it should be so much smokier. The bartender should have like just a chain cigarette.
He should have 4 cigarettes in his mouth.
Yeah.
So the weatherman is played by Sheriff Brackett.
What do you mean there's a lost ship? How do you lose a ship? That's what I imagine the patrons of this bar to be like.
They have the bubbles from old Disney cartoons when someone's drunk. They burp bubbles for some reason.
Yeah, exactly.
So the weatherman is played by Sheriff Brackett from Halloween. It took me a while to realize that.
Yeah. It's just all of John's friends.
Yeah. And then he gets ghost murdered.
Yes. There is a word other than troop for like when a director has the same, like they're his players or something like that.
Yeah, players.
Yeah. But there's
TROUPE is pretty standard for actors though.
I feel like there's another
cadre.
Another word. I don't know. I can't think of it, but I feel like there's another word that I'm not thinking of.
Adrianne Barbeau is on the phone with Sheriff Brackett and like screaming at him not to open. She's like, "Hey, the fog is dangerous. Don't open the door." And he's like,
"These kids are playing a prank or something." It's like, what kids? There's 90 people in this town tops.
And how many of them are under the age of 18?
Right.
4 of them.
Right. You guys are just pulling my leg. And it's who do you think is pulling this prank?
Nonsense. So this is where I was like, I want to know how they're picking victims and locations, but there's really no rhyme or reason to it.
Right.
was like, just give me something.
It just seems like anytime they can get at people who are isolated, it's like this guy's alone in this thing. Those three dudes are alone.
That feels so Jason Voorhees. I'm like,
yes,
these are ghost lepers from 100 years ago.
Yes,
these are vengeful ghost lepers.
Right. Like later they come after a grandma and a kid. Now, I don't know, maybe this grandma is like a secret Nazi, right? Like maybe she's the worst person
like
on
the
earth.
baby. You're talking about the babysitter.
Yeah. Like maybe she's awful. Maybe she's the worst person on earth. I am certain this 8-year-old doesn't deserve to die yet. I am certain.
Yeah.
He wasn't born here. He has no idea what the hell's going on. It seems like an 8-year-old kid. Like, what did he do that made him such a ripe target other than being in this house?
It's so bizarre. Well,
That's
he found the wood.
done. That's something they could have done. It could have been like you moved into the house of the town founder.
Oh, okay. I like that too.
Any of this would have been better.
Adrianne Barbeau is frantically trying to start her generator, and it's really great physical comedy. I don't think it's supposed to be that funny, but I found it
not supposed
very
to be
funny.
As funny as it is. Yeah. I also really love the shot of like the fog roll. So the fog kills Sheriff Brackett, then it rolls into the room and fills the room, and then you see the town go dark. It's a really great shot.
There's also a lot of great reverse shots where they like had fog pour out of a box.
Yes.
And then ran it in reverse, so it looked like the fog was like snaking back. It's so cool.
Yeah, it's just such a simple trick done well.
Also, if you're gonna do fog for Halloween or whatever, do yourself a favor and build a chiller, because that keeps your fog low to the ground and thick.
Oh,
it's really a lot of people. You can build it really easily with like an old like a giant, what are they called? Not Tupperware, the a Rubbermaid type container. So you like pump the fog into there, and then that has like a chilling agent in it, and then when it comes out the other side, it's just like thick and like you walk through it.
Okay, right on.
Yeah.
Good to know for Halloween decor.
I love the smell of fake fog, so I
actually
know things.
Super don't like the smell of fake fog, but that is funny.
Oh, it always make the smell of like Halloween Horror Nights, like that fog is always like.
Oh yeah, I get that. So this is the granny is with Adrianne Barbeau's kid here, and
I also don't know why Adrianne Barbeau assumes her kid would be attacked. Like, I want to know why. Like, what thought process?
I think she's like, that granny must have been in on this. She's old as shit. She's like, the granny is actually like her thing was, if I kill the lepers, I get to live forever. So she's like,
she just lived forever at 100 though, so it didn't.
Yeah.
She didn't get the best bargain.
Well, she did the I want to live forever without specifying I don't want to age. That old chestnut. So
Wishmaster.
Yeah. So it's like, sure. And then it's like, 150 years later, she's just like the grandmother in the attic of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre sequels.
I would love for the opposite of that. That's like, I want to live forever. And they're like, okay. And they immediately make you look 100 years old. And that's how you look for the rest of your life.
That's a good Wishmaster. Anyway, she's going to open the door. And the house is like completely surrounded by fog to the point where she was warning him to shut the windows. It's like, hey, Granny, you don't have to open the door. I don't know who told you that you did, but you don't have to do it.
It feels like a very 80s, 90s thing that like you have to open the door every time someone knocks.
Yeah, for sure. For sure, that is a holdover from the past. So I'll tell you what, we get a knock at the door, and I don't feel like getting up. Guess what I'm not doing?
I mean, now I have the video doorbell, so I can just swipe it open.
I just do the old-fashioned and peek out the window, and it's like, oh, are you a person in a Verizon shirt? No thanks.
Well, my problem is that my door is like the kind that it's wood, but it's got the giant window and like ornate window in the middle.
Yeah.
And like, so someone can see if I'm standing there. I can. Yeah. It's very obvious, and I'd rather not do that because that becomes awkward.
But if they're a salesperson, they're not going to be like, "I see you in there."
No, but I would feel awkward.
What day is it?
So I just do that, and they're like, "No, thank you."
Anyway, the kid is trapped. The granny.
I don't like this kid. He's not doing much, but he's annoying. And Granny's like, "Go to your room." And he's like, "I want to see who's there." And it's like, kid.
A murder ghost. Get in
like,
your
what do
room.
you think it is?
Yeah. Tom Atkins comes to the window, smashes it open, and pulls the kid over the broken glass. Like, there's not like let me clear every last shard or watch out. He just drags this kid through. The real life version of this kid should be shredded.
Well, also, this is where the ghosts start deciding to break down doors all of a sudden. And I was like, well, what? Yeah. Why now?
Well, you know what? They can't open the front door, but it's
a vampire situation?
A side door. You know what I mean?
You think it's a vampire deal?
It might be, because then at the church, they only break the windows.
Yeah, but that's what they could get. Like, they covered the door.
It just seems like perhaps there's rules. Okay, after you've acquired your fourth soul, you're allowed to break down doors.
It's just like, I wonder how much weed John Carpenter smoked when he came up with this, to be like, nothing makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
There's not a good through line in these rules.
Yeah. Yeah, and this is like the tiredest joke in the universe, but I'm going to say it anyway. It's just like the idea that this fog would envelop the house and then there'd be a knock at the door and any human being alive's response would be like, well, I guess I have to open it.
Yeah, absolutely not.
Anyway, so Tom Atkins shreds this kid through the window. And we have some real Mayor Vaughn energy from Janet Leigh at the vigil where they're unveiling the statue. That's another
What
thing.
is the statue of? Did we ever learn?
The founders.
Oh, we never see it though, right?
No, but that's where these ghosts should be. Like, they're
well, it's also weird because we see the statue
killer.
and it looks like a painting on a pedestal in the middle of town. It doesn't look like
weird.
A large statue of 6 people.
Yeah, it is very odd. It's a very small scale statue.
Yeah. And the power goes out.
Yeah, she's like, well, let them see the statue, Sheriff, before you disband our little gathering. It's like, what are you doing? Get out of there.
I needed to know that she was like in on 100%. It and a bad person.
100%.
There's some decent tension as Jamie Lee Curtis and Tom Atkins try and drive away with the kid from Adrianne Barbeau's house that they're kind of like stuck in a mud rut.
Yeah.
And they're being surrounded by ghosts.
Good stuff.
They get away. Everyone gets pushed to the church as Adrianne Barbeau gives eye in the sky traffic copter news at 11 coverage of the fog.
Meanwhile, the fog is like slowly filling up the lighthouse, which is a cool looking effect.
And all the fog effects in this are really cool.
Yeah.
So this is where I was like, I think this feels similar to the remake, except I think in the remake they do the like, wow, this 100-year-old person looks just like you thing, that like the female lead was a descendant of someone and like had to give herself up or something.
Yes.
But in the remake, they don't go to the church. They're at the like town museum that has artifacts.
Okay. That makes more sense, honestly.
Yeah.
The church is just like convenient for this version of the story, but it makes a lot of sense. Honestly, my favorite part of the church is, and this is going to make me sound like a true maniac, but every time I see stained glass, I imagine what it would look like if somebody threw a brick through it. And I've always I've never had any desire to do the smashing, right? I'm not a crazy person. But it's just like, man, I would look cool as shit if somebody broke it, right? Like, glass getting broken always looks cool. I don't care who you are. Like, as long as nobody's getting hurt. But like, watching a pane of glass get shattered looks cool as heck. It's like somehow very satisfying to me. Maybe other people think that's crazy. But I had never previously seen stained glass get all smashed up. Although the way this breaks isn't as sasatisfying as I wanted, like a hailstorm of these pieces.
I did. Speaking of broken glass being cool, kids. I saw this really interesting like design thing on Instagram, and it's 3 panes of glass together like a sandwich.
Yeah.
And then they take an ice pick to the middle one and they do the tink tink tink, and then it shatters, but it's pressed safely between the other 2 pieces of glass. But it's so cool because it appears everywhere in an instant. It's not like a spider crack thing like you would expect. It's like tink and the whole thing is just like pieces.
They hit it from like a side so that
they like go in from the top with a little ice pick.
Interesting.
I'm sure there's more to it than just a glass sandwich, but
yeah. I'll have to look for that. It sounds cool. At this point, they're at the church, and Holbrook has found this absolutely enormous golden cross, and he's like,
well, no. First, first Janet Leigh goes, "Oh, hang on. There's a passage in the journal about raising the dead and appeasing them," and I was like, "What? There are 10 minutes left in this movie. What did you just find, Janet Leigh?
Yeah. That's a real, like, somebody didn't like this movie in the test screening, so we got to do an ADR line sort of situation.
And then that's where you said Father Malone brings out this, like, huge cross that looks like it's literally gold bricks glued together.
It's like 5 feet high. Did you watch Outer Banks, the real cheeseball show on Netflix?
I know you and Mom are real into Outer Banks, but it's not for...
No, it is like what's dumber than an airport paperback?
No, what?
It's that. Like, you know, an airport paperback, like, is like a book that's just kind of like fun
paperback.
to read.
I thought you said paper bag. I was like, a vomit bag?
Yeah, no, like an airport paperback. Like, it is dumb as hell, but it doesn't. There's nothing about it that isn't aware. It's like it's
not trying to be something grand.
Right. It's deeply stupid, but it's got some adventure elements. But they find a giant gold cross in that show, and it is also ridiculous. So I was like, oh, have you seen this? But Hal Holbrook is then carrying it, and I like that Hal Holbrook is selling the fact that this thing would weigh 300 or 400 pounds. Like, he's barely able to move it. And meanwhile, we're cutting back and forth with, like, Adrianne Barbeau is trying to get away from the good.
She climbs. For some reason, her thought is, let me get out of the lighthouse and climb up on top of it, which just like, at that point, jump. At that point, I'm jumping.
Right. Yeah, you always have the joke of like, oh, the people go up the stairs in the horror movie instead of out the door, and like, you know, smart horror movies will make it so they can't go out the front door or whatever, and they have to go up. But this is the extreme logical end of that to me.
I agree, because like you can't go down; you're in a lighthouse.
Right. She didn't have like a rappelling setup up there for like.
No, she should have gotten the longest version of that fire escape ladder that we loved as kids.
Yes, I have one of them in my house actually.
Really?
Uh-huh. It's just good safety. I sleep on the second floor. If my house caught on fire, I would die. I was also imagining
that ladder would clink 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 for so long if she threw it over the edge of the lighthouse.
I was thinking instead of a ladder, she has like a Kevin McAllister-esque zip line up there.
I love that. And
we get like a John Carpenter synth version of John Williams, like da-da-da-da.
Candles in the window. While a stunt double in an Adrianne Barbeau wig.
Yes. A very short...
A linebacker in a curly brown wig.
Yes. I would love this.
No, instead, Adrianne Barbeau gets stabbed by a ghost, and I was like, no, you can't take her.
And she's
not done living yet.
Well, it's like she's stabbed with like a fish hook, not a fish hook as in like and a fishing pole, like a gaff hook.
Gaff hook.
Grab fish with.
Like from I Know What You Did Last Summer.
Exactly. And she like pulls that out of her shoulder, and I was like, oh snap, are we gonna get Adrianne Barbeau like having a hook fight on top of this?
I wanted her to stand up and do the swipes. Like, come on.
Get back. Yeah. Meanwhile, Hal Holbrook is holding this cross and trying to give it to the ghost, and it starts glowing. Like it's
the ghosts grab him, and the cross glows. And I was like, oh, is he melting? Like, this seems brutal for the man who was trying to do the right thing.
Yeah. But I would have liked that, honestly.
But then Tom Atkins grabs him and pulls him away from the cross, and I was like, and it just sort of all the ghosts go away, and I was like, well, this is a little anticlimactic because the fog just disappears.
Anticlimactic is exactly the word for it.
It just stops. The movie just kind of stops.
Yes.
It doesn't end. It stops.
And it's not like we get the like, oh, everybody's catching their breath, like it's all gonna be okay, and like a new day has dawned. It's like they go. They
catch their breath for 5 seconds, and they're like, well, good night, everyone.
Yeah, they like start to fly out of the church. Meanwhile, Holbrook's like, well, I guess I better go turn the lights off in the rectory. And he walks in, and you see the fog rolling under the door, and he's like, I thought they needed to kill 6 people, and the ghost appears and cuts his fucking head off.
It's so weird.
It's so out of nowhere, too. Like, the ghosts have not done any decapitations. Like, they've been very, like, close.
Stabby.
Like, intimate stabbings is the wrong phrasing, obviously.
I don't think there's a non-intimate, like, unless you're like a long sword and just like slowly doing it.
Right.
A stab is an intimate move.
But the decapitation is not.
No, it's brutal.
It's very opposite. So, and that's the end of the movie. It's like shoom, and then you hear the sound of a head hitting the floor, and it comes up with like The Fog, directed by John.
Like I half expected to do the Vincent Price laugh from the end of Thriller.
Yes,
like,
absolutely.
It's just it's over.
Yeah, it's so out of nowhere. I will say though, like, there's a lot of fun to be had in this movie, I think, and it's less than 90 minutes, so it's like the lightest of recommends for me.
If it were easier to find, because it's not streaming anywhere. And
that's right. I imagine it streams closer to the Halloween season, maybe.
Probably.
It's easier. I own it on DVD for reasons I have no explanation.
Was it $5? Is that why?
It's very possible. It also could have been like a previous rental purchase. Because like a lot of those were not like special.
like a Blockbuster going out of business.
Yeah, when there was a video store that went out of business in Frederick, it was a Hollywood Video, and on their last day, everything was a quarter.
That'll work.
And I remember taking a whole shelf of the horror section.
Why not?
I had a cart, and I was just like filling it with things. That was the sale where, I don't know if you remember this, but it was like they went out of business a week after Bruno came out, but they didn't. So
they just had a lot of Bruno.
So they had a video store new release level amount of Bruno, which was not a very popular rental and was therefore not going to be a popular purchase. So Bruno copies were like a dime.
They were like 10 copies for a quarter.
Yeah, basically. Because I remember texting you, I was like, this is so cheap, but I don't think I want it. Do you want it? I don't think you do either, but I just have to, it's 20 cents or something. So I have to ask. Yeah, but so I think that might be why I own it. And like I said, I've watched it one other time, and it was like, as I've moved, I've pared down my DVD collection and purged stuff. And there's like a chunk of stuff that has only been kept because it's like, well, we'll probably do an episode for that, and it's just like easier to have it. Yeah. So now it's like, I don't know if I'm gonna keep this copy of The Fog now. I probably will, just out of inertia, but like I could probably get rid of that.
Yeah, yeah.
But, great Carpenter score, a lot of good acting. There's some good moments in this. And I think it's a bummer because I think there's a better version of this that exists. It just doesn't. So that's the real disappointment here. Anyway, we are going to continue with John Carpenter this month before we get into the new favorites brewery, which will have a Patreon feature as well. So that'll be fun. We are going to head a few years in further for Carpenter. Movie celebrating its 40th anniversary this year, and maybe being remade. Yeah, it's 83.
I feel like they keep talking about a lot of movies getting remade, and with COVID, that kind of just petered out.
Yeah, so we went back and forth on whether we should do this now or wait, and was just like, let's just do it. We are going to be doing Christine for the second half of John-uary, a movie that and a book that I enjoy. Carpenter doing Stephen King, which I like a lot. Thank you so much for listening to the show. If you want to get more of it, head to patreon.com/dissectingthe80s. You get your own custom RSS feed and access to everything we've ever released there. So go check that out. Visit us at Dissect the 80s on Twitter. We'd love to hear from you. And if you do remember the Nun movie, definitely come say hello, because we would love that. I looked at the old titles and nothing leapt out to me. Also on Facebook, Dissecting the 80s. And if you want to send us an email, it's dissectingthe80s@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. Rate and review the show if you haven't done that. We would love to read those. It's been, like 2 years since we had a review to read on the air. So if you do a review that's not on the Apple Podcasts app, please send us a screenshot, dissectingthe80s@gmail.com. We read those on the air, and it's really important for the show. So subscribe or follow the show on whatever terminology your app uses, and do those reviews, please. Thank you so very much for listening. I have been Tripp Lano.
I will always be Andrew Lano.
Next time,
happy John-uary.
Dissecting the 80s is a Chum Some of This production.